The storm raged fiercely that night, its heavy raindrops pounding against the windows of the old ranch house, turning the world outside into a murky blur. Inside, the ranch boss, a man named Wyatt Caldwell, paced restlessly. He was in his 30s, with rugged features that displayed a life filled with hard work and silent struggles. Dressed in a soaked flannel shirt and jeans, he felt a sense of emptiness, an undeniable void in his mind where memories should have been. The accident had robbed him of not only his past, but also the very essence of who he was. Thunder cracked overhead, shaking him from his thoughts. He winced, his instinctive reaction to the sound echoing the fear that had taken root inside him since he had awakened in the hospital. He could remember nothing. No family, no friends, no past. Just a name and the faintest outline of a life he once lived. The rain drummed mercilessly on the roof, matching the chaos swirling in his mind. Desperate for fresh air, Wyatt stepped out onto the porch where the storm enveloped him. The wind whipped through his hair, and he breathed in the earthy scent of wet grass and pine. It was a momentary relief, but it was short-lived as a flicker of movement in the distance caught his eye. A figure stumbled through the darkness, drenched and clearly distressed. Against the backdrop of the storm, Wyatt felt a strange pull towards this figure. He stepped forward, a protective instinct igniting within him. As the person drew closer, he realized it was a young woman, her face pale and drawn, the outline of a small bump beneath her clothing unmistakable. She was pregnant. "Hey, you all right?" he shouted over the howl of the wind, his voice rough from disuse. The woman paused, her wide eyes meeting his. They were filled with a mixture of fear and hope, a complicated blend that resonated deeply within him. I'm looking for shelter," she stammered, her voice barely audible. "Come on then," he said, stepping aside to usher her in. The instinct to care for her overwhelmed his apprehensions. She hesitated, glancing back at the raging storm as if contemplating whether it was safer in the storm or in this man's presence. But the hunger for safety won, and she rushed towards him, seeking refuge from the rain. As she stepped inside, Wyatt felt warmth radiate from her. It was both comforting and jarring, and for a moment he simply stood, processing the unexpected situation. "I'm Wyatt," he introduced himself, fighting the urge to reach out and help her remove her soaked jacket. "Lily," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. The name felt foreign, but beautiful in his ears. They stood in the dim light of the ranch house, the storm battering the structure as if trying to break through. Lily shivered, her body trembling not only from the cold, but from the vulnerability of the moment. She looked around nervously, taking in the rustic decor and signs of a life that had persisted despite its owner's struggles. "Do you want some dry clothes?" he offered, instinctively moving towards the back room where he kept his spare things. "You shouldn't be out in this weather." Lily nodded, visibly relieved. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. While Wyatt rummaged through his closet, he couldn't help but steal glances at her. She was fragile yet resilient, and the tension in the air suggested something deeper than mere survival, a connection he couldn't quite place. "Here you go," he said, handing her a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt. As their fingers brushed, an electric current surged through him. "Thanks," she said, blushing slightly. "I usually wouldn't impose like this, but it was either this or, well, you saw the storm." "Imposing? You're not imposing," he replied, his tone softer than intended. "I don't mind." She offered a small smile, one filled with gratitude and vulnerability that made his chest tighten. As the minutes passed and they settled into an uneasy silence, the storm continued its onslaught outside, pushing the boundaries of comfort. Wyatt found himself awash with questions, but his tongue felt heavy. Instead, he filled the silence with observations. "It's a ranch, but sometimes it feels more like a prison," he admitted suddenly. "I guess I've spent too much time alone." Lily's brow furrowed in concern. "Alone?" "Yeah," he replied, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I don't remember much. It's like there's a wall between me and the life I had. I wake up every day and wonder who I am." Her face softened as she processed his words. You're more than your memories, Wyatt. There's a kindness in you, and that counts for something. Her words nestled into his heart, prompting an unexpected warmth. You think so? He asked, genuinely curious. I do, she said softly. You took me in without a second thought. Not everyone would do that. There was something about her honesty that caught him off guard. Perhaps it was the way she saw him, not just as a man without a past, but as someone who still had a chance to shape his future. A silence fell between them, heavy yet comforting as they both battled their respective storms, his of memory and hers of impending motherhood. What about you? He finally asked, breaking the silence. What's your story? Lily hesitated, twisting her fingers together. It's not as exciting, she said lightly, but there was a tremor in her voice. I'm just trying to make it through one day at a time. Before he could respond, the thunder rumbled again, louder this time, and she flinched. Without thinking, Wyatt stepped closer, a protective instinct igniting within him again. You're safe here, he assured her, surprised by the conviction in his voice. In that electrifying moment, a bond began to form, a silent agreement of understanding and safety amidst the chaos of their lives. They were two lost souls brought together in a storm, each seeking shelter in their own way. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel. As they settled into a tentative camaraderie, Wyatt felt something shift within him. Perhaps it was the spark of connection, or perhaps it was the realization that in helping another, he might just find a piece of himself in the process. The storm raged on, but inside the ranch, a flicker of hope ignited, promising something beautiful might begin to blossom amidst the chaos. Days turned into a slow rhythm at the ranch. The storm that had brought them together passed, leaving behind a heavy silence that lingered in the air. In the morning light, the world looked washed clean, but inside Wyatt's heart, the chaos of his uncertainty still echoed. He watched as Lily moved about the kitchen, her hands deftly preparing breakfast. The scent of bacon sizzling on the stove wafted through the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Here, I made some extra, she said, placing a plate in front of him, her smile brightening the otherwise somber atmosphere. I thought you could use a good meal. Wyatt hesitated for a moment, staring at the food as if it were a rare treasure. I usually don't eat this much, but thank you. Everyone needs to eat, especially you, she replied lightly, her eyes twinkling with a warmth that made him feel both vulnerable and safe. As they sat in the rustic kitchen, the silence between them was comfortable, yet charged with unspoken words. Wyatt observed Lily as she took tentative bites, her expression shifting from nervousness to appreciation with each taste. He felt drawn to her. Her strength in the face of uncertainty mirrored his own struggles. How did you end up out in that storm? He finally asked, breaking the stillness that enveloped them. She paused, setting her fork down. I was trying to get to the next town, just needed to find a place to be. Just like that? He inquired, a hint of curiosity piquing his interest. It's not always that simple, she replied, her voice quiet but firm. Sometimes you just have to take a leap, you know. I didn't have many options. Wyatt nodded, recognizing the weight of her words. His own life had been a series of calculated choices, but here she was, embracing uncertainty with a grace he admired. I get that, he said softly. I guess we're both looking for something. Lily met his gaze, and for a moment the connection between them felt palpable, like a thread weaving their fates together. The tension in the air was palpable but comforting, suggesting a shared understanding that neither dared to understand fully. As days turned into weeks, they fell into a routine. Lily helped with chores around the ranch, her presence brightening the stark, lonely landscape of Wyatt's life. They worked side by side, despite their differences in background and experience. Lily's laughter often echoed in the barn as they fed the horses or mended fences, a sound that felt foreign yet familiar to Wyatt. It amazed him how she handled the tasks, her determination shining through her every action, whether she was wielding a hammer or leading the horses to pasture. Each day, he saw her courage manifest in small ways, further igniting a spark within him that he had long thought extinguished. One afternoon, while mending a section of the fence, Wyatt glanced over at her as she bent to pick up a stray tool. A pang of admiration surged through him. "You know, you're incredible," he said, his voice catching slightly. "Not many would dive into ranch life without a second thought." Lily looked up, surprised by the compliment. "Well, I've learned that you have to be strong. It's either that or fall apart, and falling apart isn't an option for me." "Who says?" he challenged, a playful smirk creeping onto his lips. "Sometimes falling apart can be liberating." "But then what?" she shot back, her eyes narrowing slightly, but there was a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. Wyatt shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "You pick up the pieces and make something better out of them." "Easier said than done," Lily said, returning to her task. But he could sense the flicker of contemplation in her expression. As the days wore on, they found themselves sharing pieces of their lives, bits of history that painted a clearer picture of who they were. Wyatt shared stories about the ranch and the horses he loved, while Lily opened up about her dreams of a better future for her child, painting vivid pictures of hope and resilience. They began to forge a bond stronger than mere companionship. It felt like a lifeline in the stormy sea of their lives. But beneath the surface, tension brewed. The town was small, and whispers began to circulate about the strange woman living with the ranch boss, a man with no memory of his past. Wyatt felt the pressure build as the community eyed them with suspicion, judging their connection through a flawed lens. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden rays across the ranch, Wyatt sensed a change in the air. "Lily," he began cautiously, "what do you think they're saying about us?" She looked up, her expression turning serious. "I've heard the whispers," she replied, a tremor in her voice. "People are always looking for something to talk about. It's easier than facing their own issues." "It feels like they're watching us," he said, frustration creeping into his tone. "I don't want you to feel uncomfortable here." Lily shook her head, a soft smile breaking through her concern. "I'm not uncomfortable. You're not my prison keeper, Wyatt. This is a safe place for me right now, and I'm grateful for it. But you deserve more than whispered gossip," he insisted, his voice firm. "You deserve respect. Respect comes with time, and it's not my concern right now," she countered, crossing her arms as if to shield herself from the judgment that threatened to envelop them both. "I have a child to think about. That's what matters." The weight of her words hung heavily in the air, reverberating through the silence that followed. Wyatt's heart ached for her, for the burdens she carried, and the life she was trying to build amidst the uncertainty. In that moment, their eyes locked, and he felt the stirrings of something deeper than mere camaraderie, a connection that transcended their circumstances. But he was afraid of what would happen if he let himself feel too much, if he allowed himself to care for her beyond this fragile friendship they had forged. Days continued to slip by, filled with laughter and heartache, tenderness and unspoken fears. Each shared moment pulled them closer, yet with every passing day, Wyatt felt an impending sense of dread looming over them both. The truth of his past still haunted him, lurking in the shadows, and he feared the day the facade would crumble. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel. The connection between them was undeniable, yet the world outside was hungry for answers. And Wyatt knew that the moment would come when he would have to confront his past, revealing the truth that could shatter the fragile world they had built together. The walls he had erected around his heart began to tremble, and he knew they would soon be tested in ways he could not yet anticipate. The late summer sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the ranch, enveloping everything in a golden hue. Wyatt felt a tightness in his chest as the familiar figure of his past loomed on the horizon, riding toward him with an air of authority, a silhouette that disrupted the fragile peace he had begun to build with Lily. The sight of the approaching rider sent a jolt of anxiety coursing through him, intertwining with the memories he had long buried. "Who is that?" Lily's voice broke through his thoughts, laced with concern. She stood beside him, her eyes narrowing as she tried to make out the figure. The moment felt suspended, charged with the potential for conflict. "Someone I hoped never to see again," he replied, his voice low, barely above a whisper. "It's Nathaniel, the foreman from my old life." The name hung in the air like a storm cloud, dark and ominous. Nathaniel had been a pivotal figure in Wyatt's past, a mentor, a friend, and ultimately a reminder of all he had lost. "What does he want?" Lily pressed, her brow furrowed as she sensed the weight of Wyatt's unease. "I don't know," Wyatt admitted, feeling the ground shift beneath him. Memories of their shared laughter, their late-night discussions about horses and dreams, were tainted by the sharp edge of betrayal. Nathaniel had been there when Wyatt's world had crumbled, and now he was back, uninvited and unwelcome. As Nathaniel dismounted, Wyatt's heart raced. The ranch boss had been living in a bubble of tranquility, shielded from the harsh judgments of the outside world, and now that bubble threatened to burst. The past that had haunted him, the identity he had tried to escape, was galloping back into his present. "Wyatt," Nathaniel greeted, his voice deep and booming, yet tainted with a hint of something unsavory. "I heard you've been keeping a low profile. Thought I should check in. Besides, word travels fast in this town." Lily's eyes flicked between them, sensing the tension in the air. "You're looking well," she said, her voice steady, though Wyatt could feel her apprehension pulsing beneath the surface. "Thanks," Wyatt replied curtly, tension coiling in his stomach. "What do you want, Nathaniel?" "I came to see how you're managing the ranch," Nathaniel stated, his gaze shifting to Lily. "And to remind you of your responsibilities. You can't just run away from your life because you've lost your memory." "I'm not running away," Wyatt shot back, his voice rising. "I'm rebuilding. This ranch is mine, and I'll run it how I see fit." "Is that so?" Nathaniel replied, a mocking smile creeping across his lips. "You're only half a rancher without your past. You know that." Wyatt felt a fire ignite in his chest. How dare Nathaniel come here, stirring the pot, bringing chaos to what little order he had managed to establish. "I don't need you to remind me of who I was. I'm more than that, man," he retorted, his teeth clenched. "Are you?" Nathaniel's challenge echoed ominously. "You think a little memory loss changes anything? The townspeople aren't going to forget so easily, Wyatt, and neither will I." "Then why don't you leave?" Wyatt snapped, his heart pounding as he stepped forward, feeling the weight of his anger pressing down on him. "Lily and I are fine without your judgments." "Lily?" Nathaniel's gaze shifted, studying her with a predatory glint. "Interesting choice. Are you sure she's good for you?" The tension shifted like the wind, and Wyatt could sense the storm brewing not just outside but within him as well. He wanted to protect Lily, to shield her from Nathaniel's taunts, but the fear clawed at him. What if Nathaniel was right? What if the townspeople whispered, judged, and ultimately turned against them? "Wyatt, we should talk later," Lily said quietly, her hand brushing against his. "I don't want you to get into any trouble because of me." "No," he said vehemently, shaking his head. "You're not the problem here." But as he looked into her eyes, he wondered if she could sense the unease that had overtaken him. There was something about Nathaniel's return that felt like a storm cloud overshadowing their fragile bond. "Why don't you step away, Nathaniel?" Lily's voice was steady, but it held an underlying tension that Wyatt couldn't ignore. This is Wyatt's home now. This is his life. Nathaniel chuckled softly, a sound devoid of warmth. "You're brave, I'll give you that. But you're also naive." He turned his gaze to Wyatt, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "You know, they say you can't escape who you are. The truth always catches up eventually." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving a heavy silence hanging in the air. Wyatt felt as if he had been tossed into a whirlpool, churning with confusion, anger, and the sharp sting of vulnerability. "Wyatt," Lily said softly, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "Are you okay?" He looked at her, seeing the concern etched on her face, and a wave of guilt washed over him. "I'm sorry you had to see that. I just—" He paused, trying to gather his thoughts. "I thought I could put my past behind me." "You can, but it takes time," she replied, her voice gentle yet firm. "You've built a life here, even if it's not perfect. Don't let him take that away from you. But what if he's right? Wyatt whispered, the doubt creeping in like a shadow. What if I'm just fooling myself? Lily stepped closer, her eyes fierce. You're not a fool, Wyatt. You've done so much already. You can't let a ghost from your past dictate your future. As they stood there, the sun setting behind the mountains, Wyatt felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he could confront his past, embrace the truth while still holding on to the love and connection he had found with Lily. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel, he said, trying to lighten the mood as the tension began to ease. Lily smiled at him, the warmth of her gaze filling him with resolve. Together, we can face anything. And in that moment, surrounded by uncertainty, they found strength in their bond, ready to confront the trials that lay ahead, both within and outside the ranch. It was a step forward, however uncertain, but one they would take together. The air was thick with tension as Wyatt stood there, heart racing, contemplating the weight of the decision before him. The sun had begun to set, casting an orange glow that danced across the ranch, illuminating the dust motes floating through the barn. He knew he faced a crossroads, one that would define not only his future, but also the future of the fragile bond he had built with Lily. He glanced at her, her figure framed against the fading light, the warmth of the day receding. She was more than a mere presence in his life. She had become his anchor, a source of comfort in the chaos of his fractured memory. The way she had looked at him, with a mix of concern and unwavering support, stirred something deep within him. It was a reminder that he wasn't alone in this struggle. Lily, he started, his voice barely above a whisper. She turned her gaze toward him, her eyes wide and filled with a blend of hope and apprehension. What is it, Wyatt? I don't know if I can face it, he admitted, the admission tasting bitter on his tongue. What if the truth is more than I can handle? You've handled so much already, she replied softly, stepping closer, her presence wrapping around him like a warm blanket. You've built this life, and you've done it without knowing who you truly are. But you can't keep running from your past. It's a part of you. Her words struck a chord within him, reverberating through his thoughts. It was true. He had been trying to create a new life at the ranch, but how long could he ignore the shadows lurking in the corners of his mind? Nathaniel's reappearance had rattled him, forcing him to confront the reality he had been avoiding. Could he truly embrace a future with Lily if he remained shackled to the uncertainty of his past? As if sensing his turmoil, Lily reached out and took his hand, her grip firm yet gentle. You're stronger than you think, she encouraged, her voice steady. We can face this together. Just take your time. I'll be here. No matter what. The sincerity in her words wrapped around his heart, igniting a flicker of hope. He could feel the warmth of her grasp, a stark contrast to the chill of doubt that had settled over him. Perhaps it was time to stop hiding, to confront whatever truths awaited him. I won't let you down, he vowed, feeling a surge of determination rising within him. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. The fear still lingered, but alongside it now was a sense of shared strength. That evening, as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Wyatt made his way to the center of the ranch where the remnants of his past felt more tangible than ever. He stood surrounded by the familiar sights, the corral, the old barn, the fields stretching out into the horizon. Each element echoed with memories he had yet to uncover, but it was time to unearth them. I'm ready, he declared into the night, his voice breaking the stillness. The wind carried his words away, but he hoped they would find their way back, weaving together the fragments of his history. It wasn't long before he heard the sound of footsteps behind him. He turned to see Lily approaching, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the moon. What are you thinking? She asked, her voice laced with curiosity. I'm thinking it's time to confront Nathaniel, he replied, the resolve in his voice surprising even himself. If he has answers about who I was, then I need to hear them. I can't let him have this power over me anymore. Lily nodded, her expression shifting from worry to pride. I'll be right there with you, she said, her eyes shining with steadfast support. Together they walked toward the barn, each step echoing the heartbeat of the ranch. The air crackled with anticipation, as if the very land beneath their feet recognized the significance of the moment. Wyatt felt the weight of his past pressing in on him, and yet the fear that had once threatened to consume him began to dissolve. It's strange, he mused, glancing at Lily as they walked. I used to think that facing my past would mean losing everything I've built, but now I see it differently. It feels like a chance to reclaim my future. Her smile was radiant, a beacon of hope lighting the way. And whatever happens, we'll face it together. You're not alone in this, Wyatt. As they approached the barn, Wyatt's heart raced with a mix of nerves and anticipation. He pushed open the heavy door, revealing the dimly lit interior. The familiar scent of hay and leather enveloped them, grounding him in the present moment. Wyatt! Nathaniel's voice was sharp, cutting through the atmosphere like a knife. He stood leaning against one of the wooden beams, arms crossed with a cocky expression plastered on his face. I didn't think you'd actually come to face the music. With Lily by his side, Wyatt felt an unexpected surge of courage. I'm here to learn the truth, he stated firmly, refusing to let Nathaniel's arrogance intimidate him. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow, amusement dancing in his eyes. The truth? You really think you're ready for that? I have to be, Wyatt replied, determination coloring his tone. I can't keep living in the dark. Lily squeezed his hand, her presence grounding him as he prepared to navigate the minefield of his past. With each word exchanged, Wyatt felt the chains of his uncertainty begin to loosen. He had the support of someone who believed in him, someone who showed him that vulnerability was not a weakness but a strength. As Nathaniel began to speak, recounting snippets of Wyatt's former life, a sense of clarity washed over him. The memories he had feared resurfacing were not just shadows of regret, but pieces of a puzzle that defined who he was. I won't let my past dictate my future, Wyatt interjected, his voice steady. I'm more than who I used to be. With each revelation, he felt a weight lift off his shoulders, the truth no longer feeling like a burden, but a stepping stone toward healing. As the conversation continued, Wyatt realized that it wasn't just about reclaiming his identity. It was about embracing the new person he had become, shaped by his experiences and the love he had found with Lily. When Nathaniel finally left, the tension in the barn dissipated, replaced by an air of renewal. Wyatt turned to Lily, his heart pounding in his chest, overflowing with gratitude. Thank you for standing by me, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Lily smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I will always stand by you. You're not just a ranch boss, Wyatt. You're a man who's learning to love and be loved. The connection between them deepened as they stood together in the silent barn, surrounded by the echoes of the past. They knew they still had challenges ahead, but together they could carve out a future filled with hope, love, and understanding. As they embraced under the soft glow of the moonlight filtering through the barn, Wyatt felt a sense of peace settle over him. They had confronted the truth, faced their fears, and emerged stronger together. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to leave a comment about your favorite moment.